Before you print your editioning paper, you need to condition the paper so it can properly receive the ink. And when I say properly receive the ink, I mean that the fibers of the paper need to be open. And we open those fibers by evenly dampening the paper in a damp pack. Also, the damp pack will keep your paper in the proper printing condition for multiple days. Some damp packs can last up to a week before your paper starts to get moldy. If you're printing over the course of a few days, it's imperative that you have the damp pack to slide the paper back into in between printing sessions. Even if you're printing during the day, as soon as you finish printing your block, if you have another block to print, you just slide that paper right back into the damp pack. There are 3 steps to preparing your paper in the damp pack. And the first is to cut the newsprint down to size. The second part is to evenly dampen the newsprint. And then the third part is to let the newsprint condition in the damp pack. And then it will be ready to dampen your editioning paper. All you need to create the damp pack is some newsprint, a clear plastic shell. Well, it doesn't have to be clear. It can just be a plastic shell. I'm just using a gallon-sized Ziploc bag here. And I have a cutting blade and a ruler so I can cut my paper down to size. You also need some water and a water brush to dampen your paper. First, I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to cut my newsprint down to size so it can fit inside this bag. And when I'm cutting, I'm just going to cut really, I've already kind of folded it down the middle here. This is a packing newsprint that, you can just get at U-Haul, any shipping store, Home Depot. And I also really like to buy newsprint in bulk by the roll, especially with woodblock printing. I just go through so much newsprint. Now, you can also use an old newspaper for this, where the ink has set. So if you subscribe to a like your local newspaper or like the New York Times, you can just use an older edition that's like a few weeks or a month old, and then the ink won't run when you're running water over it. I like to use blank newsprint. We're going to need about 16 pages in our damp pack. Our damp pack is composed kind of like a book, where we just flip open each page. So if we have 16 pages, we're going to need 16 pieces, or 8, can't do math, 8 pieces of paper. All right, now I'm going to fold this to see if it can fit. No, it can't, so I'm just going to cut it down a little bit more. If I fold this in half, all right, I want to be able to slide in here, so this looks pretty good. There's plenty of room here for the paper to slide in. Right, I need to cut it this way because this is too wide. So I'm going to cut it, I want to give it a few inches, about 2 inches, so right here. Just making a mark with my X-Acto blade. Always test the size first before you start making the damp pack. Okay. Let's see if this will fit in my Ziploc bag. If I can comfortably pull this in and out and seal it, yep, it can fit. So this is like a perfect size for the damp pack. To create our damp pack, we're going to need our newsprint cut down to size and our water brush. I'm going to dampen every 2 pages in this book, this quote damp pack book. So I'm going to start by opening the first 2 pages. And I'm going to start from the center and make one long stroke out, like so, and just continue working across the page, like so, so it's evenly damp. And if you run out of water towards the end, you can do it again, like so. but you want to make sure that this paper is covered with water. We don't want puddles. This is a little too wet, that's okay, but ideally you would brush over each surface once. So I'm going to turn 2 more pages and do the exact same thing. Nice, long, even strokes with my water brush. And what I am doing is evenly dampening the newsprint in this damp pack. I think it's really important that in this stage of the process, you be you be tidy. I think tidy is a good word for it. You want the pages of your damp pack to be even. We don't want them all to be separate pages because then it won't dampen evenly. Your paper won't dampen evenly. We want a nice crease down the center of our book so we can easily flip the pages. It'll be easy to pull our paper in and out of. I keep forgetting to refill my brush on that last that last one. And so I'm just flipping each page like a book and dampening the left page only. And on the last page, I'm going to dampen the back of the book. So throughout this stack of newsprint, we have sheets that are very wet and sheets that are partially wet, but the rhythm is consistent throughout the book. All right, now that I've dampened the paper for the damp pack, I'm going to slide it in my Ziploc bag. It's expanded a bit, as you can see. So if you are using a Ziploc bag, then you definitely want to leave it. You definitely want to make sure you have a few inches or an inch or so room. Make sure all the air is out. There are no holes in the bag. Seal the bag. Use one of your favorite art books to apply some light pressure on top of the pack. What's going to happen over the course of 40 minutes is that each sheet of this newsprint is going to become equally damp, right? That water is going to travel up and down, creating some inertia throughout the pack, and it's going to evenly dampen every single sheet of newsprint. All those wrinkles in the newsprint are going to become perfectly flat, and you're going to have this beautiful damp pack that's ready to receive your paper. While you're making your damp pack, now is an ideal time to cut down your printing paper. It's been over an hour, just over an hour, and I have my damp pack, and the next step is to dampen my paper and insert it into the damp pack. First, we're going to check on the damp pack to see how the newsprint feels. We don't want the newsprint to be overly wet. We're not looking for puddles, but we are looking for newsprint that's cool to the touch. Here's the damp pack. I'm going to scoot this over here and let's see what we have. Okay, so as I look here, I'm going to open this up, and as you can see, the paper is now nice and cool. There are a few wrinkles, but most of them have just kind of evened out because of the moistness. And more importantly, as you can see, the water is pretty evenly distributed throughout. This is what we're looking for. If you remember when I was first applying the water to the newsprint, there would be sheets that were heavily wet and then a few sheets in between that were partially wet because the water bled through. Now the damp pack has evenly distributed all that water across every single sheet, and we wanted to do the same thing with our paper. The next step is to dampen the paper and let it condition in the damp pack. It's good to have something to place underneath your paper for this part of the process, like a paper towel or a rag, something like that, because it can get pretty wet. One of the great things about woodblock printing is, although most of the time you will be printing on Japanese papers, Western paper also works. One of the highlights on printing on Western paper, especially when you're first starting out, is that it's not as sensitive as Japanese paper. You're not going to pick up every single nook and cranny in your print. There's a little bit more error for nuance, I guess you could say. So I'm going to begin by dampening my Somerset book. And I'm going to dampen every other sheet. So I'm going to place this down. And just like I did with the, with the newsprint, I'm going to slide my water brush across. I think this is actually 2 sheets. It is. And I'm going to place it in my damp pack. So I'm setting up my damp pack, placing the paper in my damp pack. So when it's time for me to print, I can just slide the paper out and immediately place it on the block in the right direction, facing the right way. So the paper is face side down and it's horizontal. So I guess I could just go like so. And as you can see, I'm also slightly staggering each sheet of paper. There's damp, dry, damp, dry. With Western paper, it's good to let the paper sit in the damp pack for at least an hour. For Japanese paper, depending on how thick it is, it could be as little as 15 minutes or around an hour. I really prefer to make my damp packs the night before, so that gives like the whole night for the paper to condition, and then I'll print in the morning or the early afternoon or something like that. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 sheets here. That, I think, is enough for this page. And this is in the center of the book. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a little tag. Oh, I have one right here, right? Like a little newsprint tag. So I know where my place is. And I'm just going to, pop it right there. Can't decide. There you go. And then I'm going to flip the page, slide this back into a clear plastic sleeve. Make sure it's airtight. Get all that air out there. And you do not need to let this sit weighted with a book. You're just going to let it sit unweighted for an hour to overnight, whatever you're most comfortable with. So this is how you condition your paper to make prints. You first prepare the damp pack, then you cut down your paper while the damp pack is conditioning, and then you slide your paper into the damp pack and just you prepare your printing desktop.